Okay, picture this scenario. You're sitting in your office doing your work. You know, you're happy, you just had a great long weekend, and then all of a sudden your boss comes in and says, "Hey, look, I need you to help me out here. I am doing a slideshow presentation for my cat Tommy, who's just come back from the vet, from a little bit of surgery, and I just wanted to give him a little bit of a video to show him how much I love him. But I'm having a bit of trouble putting some really great titles in iMovie because I don't have anything that sort of has anything that looks celebratory." So he says, "Can you make something that looks a bit like, confetti coming out of the sky from a cannon, like a ticker tape parade? And I really want it to be like a celebration." You know what I'm saying? And you're like, "Well, I don't really have enough time to kind of do that kind of thing." I was, "Well, just do it after hours, do it when it's not during work hours. I'm sure you have enough time." And he just walks away. And you just kind of give him this look, kind of like, "Well, I don't know how to do that." Well, here's where I come in. I'm going to show you how to make a confetti gun. And this is what we'll come up with today. So, as you can see, there's only a few elements here. The hardest part, obviously, is setting up the particular element. Now, I apologize in advance if you don't have particular, but you know what? You should get it because it's pretty awesome. Anyway, we'll dive straight into it. And so we'll just start with a new composition. So here we go. We'll start actually making the confetti element first. I know this won't be immediately apparent, but we'll make this, we don't have to make it, we can just make it one frame because that's all we'll be using of it. So essentially what we're doing is setting up the sprite. So, sorry, the polygon, which I'll get very soon. Confetti polygon. So we go, okay. Now it's only 200 by 200 and that's all it needs to be. We're going to go to the shape tool here, and we're just going to grab make sure the fill tool is set to something like that. Fill is on. Make sure the stroke is set to none. Now let's go in here, and as soon as you start drawing, it will start making lines. And there you have it. That is your confetti polygon. Pretty easy. Now let's make a new composition. We'll just pick, actually I've just got a custom new one. This is for 1024 by 576, but it doesn't really matter what you choose as long as the comp works for you. We'll make it 8 seconds and we'll call this Confetti Celebration. All right. Now, here's what we're going to do. We're going to make a new solid. I don't like how I have so many things up here. It's ridiculous. Ridic, as my sister would say. Here we go. We're going to call this I could spell particular confetti 1. Okay. Now I'm going to go to effects and presets and go particular. Drag this on. And there you go. Now, if you've never used particular, this is basically what it looks like in its most basic form. So it just has an emitter. So it comes with a couple of, so you have to kind of think of particular in a couple of different ways, a couple of different ways. You can really think of it in one way. It's a particle generating system. If you don't quite understand that, I'm sorry, I can't really help you more than that. But essentially there is one component you have to think about, which is the emitter. Emitter is basically where all the particles come from. So where they all, if you imagine it's like a hose, and where all the water comes out from. This is where you define where the end of the hose is, essentially. So you can move this emitter around, and it can start from there, or you can make it start from the middle where it is. It also has direction, so you can actually go, okay, let's make it, actually that's not a very good example. Let's make it directional. So if you spin it this way, you can see that it spits out that way instead. So it spits out to the left, or if you you turn it up that way, it spits up to the top. Like like a fire hydrant where you like explode it, knock it over, where the cop car drives by, knocks it over, and all the water starts gushing out. And all the kids start coming out and play because it's like, yeah, water's coming out of the fire hydrant. Anyway, it's probably more an American thing but we're going to set it to directional anyway. There's a couple other things too. Velocity affects how fast everything comes out. It's probably a bit easier for me to show you if I just put it on directional, because that makes a lot more sense. So how fast everything comes out from, like the rate, how fast that rate is. So if you reduce that rate, it'll come out a little bit slower. So you can see there. And then if you increase, it means the particles, if you increase the velocity, the particles will come out faster, obviously, because that's what velocity is. Velocity distribution is more to do with just, actually I'm not 100% sure what that does, but you know, you can read it up if you want to. And velocity from motion, again, I'm not 100% sure. Now there are emission extras if you want to go into it. This isn't really a tutorial on how to do particular, but I'll thought I might go through them. Pre-run means that if you start from, everything starts from 0, but you can actually set it to start from a little bit earlier. So you can say start it from 38 seconds and it'll start from 38 seconds on. Actually, I think that's 38 frames. I don't know what periodicity you run, I apologize. But for the sake of this tutorial, I know enough what you need to know. All right, so that's what we're gonna do. So I'm just gonna go back here and set a few keyframes. So what I actually wanna do is, we want to make it explode and then suddenly stop producing particles. Because at the moment, what you're seeing here is that for every second, it's producing 100 particles. So it'll keep producing particles and keep spitting them out per se, like a tap. What we wanted to do is just start, and then right after it starts, it stops producing particles, just like how a confetti gun would actually work. So we'll set the particles to 10,000. 10,000, I can count, yep. And set a keyframe. Now we're going to go ahead one frame, pressing page down, and then we're going to set it to 0. Now what you're going to see is that a whole bunch of particles are going to come out, as you see, and then it just stops producing particles, which is exactly what we wanted to do. Now we're going to set the rotation to 90, which we've already done, and we're also going to set the the X rotation. Just actually, we're not going to do it that way at all. What we're going to do is we're going to make this slightly up, and then we're going to slightly turn this to the left. So what we're going to do is get it to shoot out like that. I'm also going to move this down here so it's a bit easier to see, but we're going to shoot it from the corners essentially. So I don't actually think that's a little bit too, yeah, it's a bit better. Actually, yeah, sure, that's better there. So what we're going to do is it's going to go boo, and what we want to do is, when it comes to about here, we want it to sort of start falling down. Now, we'll get to that stage in a sec, but right now they're just continually traveling out into the ether, and then they never returned. Just like my dog that ran away. All right, now the velocity, we're actually gonna set quite high for other reasons, but I'll just let you know right now. Actually, we'll set that last because I'll explain that as we go through. Now, the particle life, I'm just going to put this up. Now, what that means is like how long the particle is on screen for. So from this point, now you won't be able to see it, but they will start popping off after a certain amount of time. But after 3 seconds, they'll disappear. So you can see there, and if you go to the next frame, they're gone. And they should still be there. So if I make it 4 seconds, you'll actually see that they still exist. Now, what I want to do is make it to the length of time of the screen that it's on. So we'll make it all the way to 8 seconds. So it means from the beginning to the end of the animation, it will last the whole time it's on screen. Now we're going to change the sprite. What's really good is you can actually customize your particle. So we'll pick textured polygon, fill. Now, one thing you got to do here is actually grab this confetti polygon that we made and pull it into your composition. Otherwise, it won't recognize what it's actually trying to create. So we're going to put it in there, and we're just going to turn it off. There it is there, just in case. Oh, and the reason I made it so small is because that's what Particular likes. So I made it 200 by 200. Try not to make it much bigger than that. Here we go. Unless you have a good reason, but it doesn't generally like it. So, and then we go, so we pick texture polygon, and we go to texture, and we go confetti polygon. Yay. And then we go random. Now it's only referencing 1 frame. So what we're going to do is just go start at birth and loop. So what we're going to see is that there are all these squares, which is, well, it is the desired effect, but we're not quite there yet. So next, we're going to basically set the rotation of the particle to a random rotation. So we want basically the particles to randomly rotate at different times. So as you can see, they're going to, now they're starting to randomly rotate. I don't know if you can really see that, but they're randomly rotating as opposed to where they were before. So before, I'll show you, they were just all flat. Now if you put 20 on random rotation, they're all starting to rotate in slightly different, but they're not spinning, they're just randomly rotating in different directions. Now I'm going to put a bit of speed on this rotation, so I'll put 0.5 and 0.5. This is just what I figured out. You can muck around with it and do whatever you like with it, but this is just the numbers that I found worked. And I'll make the size about 9, because I think that's actually a bit too small. And the size random, I just put up until I just felt like a good number. So maybe about 35% is not bad. Okay, that's looking not bad. Now, the other thing we've got to do is, now you can do this with opacity or size of a life. Basically, you want to make sure that the particle kind of ends in a nice way. I just pick opacity. So what you do is, what's really great about this is that you can either just kind of draw it, which is, you know, cool. Or you can just sort of, yeah, I just do this. And basically it just means when it gets to the end, it goes here and then it just dips to nothing. Which I think is, you know, it's not realistic, but it'll work. Oops, I'm not doing it very well, am I? Oh, what's going on? Come on, Nick, you can draw this. There we go, that's better. So what happens is towards the end it'll start fading out, but we're never going to see that because it's never going to be on screen for that long. Let's see. It'll become apparent in a sec. Okay, and I'm just gonna add some randomness to the color. We'll pick a color. Let's pick let's see, blue. Let's pick blue, eh? And then we'll randomize. When you add random color, it sort of makes the shades of blue a little bit different from each other. So it just adds a little bit of extraness. And the more, obviously, the more random you go, the more crazy the colors get. Actually, that blue is probably not standing out as much as I like. I'll probably just make it a little bit more saturated. There you go. It's probably better. Then you have a bit more definition in the colors. And there's a little bit. So you can kind of see it's getting there now. What's next? Let's look at the shading. Now, the shading will add a lot more depth to it. So we're going to turn it on and we're going to switch to none. And as you can see, nothing is there. Like it's all just gone. That's because it's relying on a light to basically come into the situation. So we're going to add light. Just go okay, and now we're seeing a bit of magic. So it adds a little bit of shading, but it's not quite immediately obvious. It's not immediately obvious at this stage. We're just going to bump up that a little bit, but it will become obvious a bit later. So we'll just leave that where it is for the moment. Now. Where were we? We're at shading. Now we're going to go on. And this is where we're trying to figure out how do we make it fall. Now we're going to add in some gravity. So we'll make sure the physics model is set to air, and basically we're going to add some gravity. Now it's a bit too much there. Yeah. So it's going to basically make it fall. So if you can see what happens here, it sort of makes it fall down like, which is no good because it just makes it look like the particles are really heavy. But 170 actually isn't a bad number. We just have to increase the velocity of the... So to basically combat the fact that it looks like it's falling down too heavily, which isn't right. It looks like it's just a horrible heap. We're going to increase the velocity a little bit more so that it's going to explode a lot more, basically. And so that way, and what I found was, I know this seems very high, but we want it to explode and fall. Well, that's the rate we want it to explode. So I'll just show you how fast it's exploding. And I want it to explode that fast because this is exactly how fast it would explode. The problem is that there's nothing kind of stopping it from flying out of the screen. Gravity does help at the end of the, I don't know how to explain it, but it doesn't stop it enough. So we need something to kind of slow it down a bit. And this is where we're going to add some air resistance. So if we're going to add air resistance of, I think 2 from memory, and that sort of starts slowing things down a bit. I might have actually put too much velocity on there, but we'll see how we go. But as you can see, it starts slowing things down a little bit. It's probably gone a little bit too far. So what I'm going to have to do is reduce the velocity just a tad, because I think I've just gone a little bit overboard here. As you can see, that's kind of the desired effect. I still feel like that is not enough. It still needs to come out pretty fast. Maybe I'll increase the air resistance to 3. Yeah, maybe 4 even. Let's try that. Now it's looking better. Now I'm going to increase the turbulence field to affect just the position. So what that means is that it's introducing like a bit of waviness to the particle. So I'm just going to add just affect the position of how everything moves. So when it falls down, it sort of looks a bit like it's moving, wiggling around a bit, sort of like adding a wiggle to things. And this fading curve will be linear. I'm not 100% sure what that means, but I know that works better than what it was. So let's have a look. That's looking a bit respectable. Now I feel like it is still looking a little bit low. So maybe about there. Now, I think that would be velocity distribution and velocity. A bit random maybe. Yeah, that looks a bit more realistic. So as you can see, things are starting to fall down to the ground. And that's looking a bit more like confetti. Now you can add a bit of motion blur on here if you really want to kind of get that extra, you know, bubble. I'll just add it here just so you can see what it looks like. But it's just to add a little bit of realism, I guess, to the animation. But it's really completely up to you. I'm quite happy to have no what do you call, motion blur on it. I think it looks better in some instances. I think this particular instance it looks better. Yeah, I think this needs to whiten. That's what I'm looking for. I just thought it was looking a little bit too close, and I think that looks more like what would actually happen in a ticker tape parade. So what's really great now is that if you wanted to, you can just basically duplicate this and switch this over to the other side. What do we have it on before? So let's make it -49, and we'll move this to this point here. I'm just going to save real quick. All right, and there you go. So if you want to kind of make that a little bit more interesting, what we'll do is we'll offset one of them by a few frames. There we go. So it looks a little bit more random. And essentially, that is it in terms of making your ticket tape confetti parade. I hope that makes sense. Now, and then you just have to throw in your text over the top of "Welcome home," whoever. Can you see there at the end? It's starting to fade off. So that's what I meant by fading. So it just sort of slowly fades off rather than you know, just disappearing completely. So it's not as noticeable. Now, maybe some of the confetti is looking a little bit too not random enough. So we can go back and tweak some of it. But I mean, that's it. And so I hope that makes sense. We can push one of these back in Z space. As my fiance would always tell me. Z, we are in Australia, Nick. We don't say Z, we say Z. It's like, I know, but you know, I grew up on Sesame Street. Anyway. Yeah, so here we go. I'll set this off and I'll offset this as well. Yeah, so it looks like we're just having a big party. You get what I'm saying? Anyway, so that's it from me. I hope that's made a lot more sense. I know it's been a long tutorial, but I thought it was a good one. Anyway, if you've got any more suggestions for tutorials, just hit me up and I'll see you next time. Oh, and just remember, don't forget to subscribe because I feel like this channel could go somewhere. I think this could take me to the big time, but you know, whatever.